Are you ready? Don't go anywhere. Mr. Hush is about to take you on a spine, chilling journey with his captivating horror stories. Story 1.
I was really happy with my wife for more than 10 years, and we lived in New York all that time. But before that, we first met at a work meeting, and after a few months, we started going out. We both work for the same company that sells and advertises things, but in different parts of the company in different offices. After a year of dating, we moved in together. Then, a year later, we both got better jobs and earned more money. Because of this, we were able to buy a house and start paying for a mortgage. Just 6 months later, another year passed, and then we decided to get married. 4 years later, we moved house and bought a bigger property with a pool and a large yard. We both agreed from the start of our relationship that we didn't want children and that we both wanted to concentrate on our careers. So in our minds, having kids would have affected those plans significantly. We both enjoyed our jet-set lifestyle of flying off to different countries for work and also holidays. We made sure to have at least 2 vacations in foreign places every year. Overall, we had a good life. But one day, when I was in Florida for work, promoting stuff for a big company, something happened that changed my life a lot. I'd been at the convention for 2 days. There was food included at the lunchtime intervals, and everything seemed to be going well until some of the delegates on the 3rd day started becoming unwell, and also the main speakers had been affected. At the end of the 3rd day, the convention center manager made an announcement. He said that the convention was going to have to be canceled as there seemed to be a sickness bug circulating through the delegates and speakers. So, for the benefit of all concerned, it has been decided to close the center. The government control has been advised of the situation, and closure sample taking and then the center deep clean will be carried out. I immediately left the center after speaking to my team. I told them to go back to the hotel, take a shower, and change all their clothes, and put the dirty clothes in bags and wash on a hot wash. Then, when they got home, I told them to try and minimize any contamination and that they should just isolate. Luckily, it seemed that none of my team had been infected, but I knew delegates who had been, and both had the doctor called because they were so rough. I said to my team to head home on the next available flight. When I got back to my hotel, I showered and bagged my clothes and got changed. I then tried ringing my wife, but it went to voicemail right away. I called her office, and her assistant picked up. She said that Rachel had taken this week off as a holiday. Strange, I thought. She never mentioned to me when I set off for this convention that she was going on a holiday. I decided not to leave a message on her phone and just caught the next flight back, which was the following morning. I picked up the car from the airport parking lot and set off, as there were no delays on the way, so I was home virtually no time as planned. As I drove up my drive, I saw a black Audi car parked by the front door. On the other side was Rachel's red Jag. I parked alongside and got out and stared at the Audi. From what I could remember, we didn't know anyone with that car. I opened the door and walked inside. There were clothes on the floor, some belonging to Rachel and a man's jacket. I rushed up the stairs to our bedroom and opened the door. Then, I saw Rachel in bed with a stranger. She screamed, and the guy got out of bed, grabbing his pants and apologizing. But I went to the bed, grabbed him by the neck, and took him to the bedroom door. I threw him out, and he left in his car with creaking tires. I looked at Rachel and told her, "Why did you ruin everything like this?" She begged me, but I thought the marriage was done. 3 months later, we got divorced. We sold the house and split the money. I quit my job at the old company because I wanted to leave New York and have nothing to do with Rachel. I used my connections to get a job in Virginia. I bought a smaller house with 3 bedrooms. It had a smaller pool and yard, but the last house was big enough for 2 people. The agent told me the owner wanted to sell quickly, so I made an offer. The seller accepted my first bid, which was great because I wanted to leave the hotel where I'd been living for the last 3 weeks. Then, I arranged for my things to be moved from New York, and 6 weeks later, on a Saturday morning at 10:00 I got the keys. The moving truck showed up, and by 3:00 p.m., they were gone. I sat in Box City in the living room, looking out at the trees in the backyard. At 5:00 p.m., I had a coffee by the pool. The water was green and needed cleaning, so I knew I had to get someone to do that. But it was a shame because I wanted to swim that evening. I was tired after the day, so I had a microwave TV dinner and a couple of glasses of red wine. I dozed off on the sofa and woke up startled out of my rest. I looked around the room, feeling confused, trying to figure out what woke me up. Then, I saw the backyard security light had turned on. I got up from the chair and went to the big window. The light brightened up everything from the lawn to the trees at the back. The pool's water was shining in the lights, but hang on a minute, it was showing a rippling effect as if someone or something was in there. I stared, but the angle was not right to see better. Maybe an animal has walked into the garden, I thought, and set off the light and then perhaps fallen in the pool. I decided to go and check. I opened the patio doors and went outside. As I got closer, I saw small puddles of water on the pool's edge, but when I looked into the pool, the water was calm again, just moving a bit in the night breeze. I looked all around, but there was no sign of any animals. But it still didn't explain the puddles by the pool edge. Maybe it got out, I thought. I started to go back inside, locked up, and went upstairs to bed. I don't know how long I'd been asleep before my bed started shaking. What the heck? I looked around, but no one was there. I frantically searched the room and turned on the bedside light. Then, I heard a splash from the backyard, the pool. I thought, once more. I jumped out of bed and went to the window. The security light turned on again. This time, from the high view, I could see a small head of someone swimming in my pool, some neighbor's kid doing it for a truth or dare, I thought. So I put on my clothes and rushed down the stairs. I opened the doors again and ran across the lawn to the pool. I looked at both ends. The water was choppy, like something had been there, but there was no sign of anyone. Then, I noticed the small puddles by the pool edge, but this time they left a puddle track. I followed the wet trail from the pool to the grass at the back of the yard. Then the wet tracks just disappeared. None of this made any sense. I turned to go back to the house when I heard a scratching sound. I turned around but couldn't see where the sound was coming from. It stopped, then started again, louder this time. Suddenly, I realized it was coming from the well at the back of the property. I ran over to the well, but the cover was nailed down. Then the sound came again this time. I thought I heard a very faint voice saying, "Please." I tried grabbing the wooden cover on top of the well. I tried to move it, but it wouldn't budge. I hurried to the garage, grabbed a crowbar and a flashlight, and came back. The scratching sound was getting more intense. I put the crowbar on one side, pushed down hard, and the wood broke, flying off into 2 pieces. Then, suddenly, a terrible smell hit me. When the top came off, I turned away for a moment, and when I looked back, I saw the underneath part of the well cover had hundreds of deep scratches. I got a chill. What happened here? Who or what got down or was stuck here? I turned back to the well and shone my flashlight down. It was really deep, but my light showed what looked like an old teddy bear. I saw some clothes and something white in the water below. As I stood there, I suddenly felt something next to me on my right side. Then a small hand grabbed my left hand, but it was gone in a second before I could react. I shone the flashlight everywhere but saw nothing. I walked back to the house, feeling confused, and called the cops, telling them I think there might be a body in my well. They sent a team, and by 10:00, the next morning, they confirmed there was the remains of a child. They brought it up, and they thought it was the body of a girl, maybe around 11 years old. The police finished looking into things, and then a few days later, they told me the people who owned the house before had been foster parents. They took care of a little girl for 2 years, but she disappeared one night. According to the foster dad, it seemed like she might have been taken, but the police couldn't find her. The foster parents were questioned many times, but they never found any proof, so the case stayed unsolved. However, for months after the girl went missing, both parents were found dead in their bedroom from an overdose. But the only evidence they found was the little girl's skull, and it had a crack on the left side. So, the cops thought something bad happened with her, and they believed the girl's body was put down the well. Sadly, during her disappearance, the file said the well was sealed, so it wasn't checked. The police officer asked me why I went to the well in the middle of the night. I thought for a moment, how could I answer without sounding crazy? So I said, I don't really know. Let's just say I had this strange feeling something wasn't right about it. He raised his eyebrow and said, "Okay, we'll leave it at that." After that, nothing strange happened at the house, but I left the well open.
Story 2.
I lived in Georgia with my parents for my whole life. Then, one Friday evening, while we were having dinner, Dad shared some really important news. My company, he said, offered me a really good job. They want me to be the boss for their work in Florida, in a place called Tampa. If I say yes, our family would move there together. The company will pay for moving, and they'll also help us buy a new house if we want. He then said the news surprised him a bit, but he wanted us to think about it. We could see it as a fresh start. He added, since we haven't had a holiday for a while, especially not to Florida. So we think we should give it a try. Mom and I nodded and said, okay. Then Mom asked Dad, how much time do you have to decide if you want the job? He said, 2 weeks, and if it's a yes, then however long it takes to buy a house in Tampa. A week later, we had another meeting where we all agreed to the idea of moving to Tampa, Florida. I could sense Dad's happiness because he really wanted this job. Shortly after, Mom and Dad arranged a visit to Tampa to explore potential houses. Typically, they spent long weekends there, returning on Mondays to update me on any properties they found interesting. Unfortunately, it took more than a month to find a good house, but it was worth the wait. Mom and Dad brought me along for a second look to hear what I thought. The house had 4 bedrooms, an outside hot tub, and a double garage. The gardens weren't huge, but the back one was a bit bigger than the front. Inside, it was modern, and the rooms were pretty big. Mom really liked the kitchen, which was twice as big as our current one. My mom is an excellent cook, I thought, and her food is the best I've ever had, even when eating out. I liked the house, and after some tough talking, Dad managed to buy it. After that, we got really busy. We had to put our current house up for sale and, at the same time, go through all the things we stored over the years. Dad said we need to be strict and only keep what we really use and need. Anything we don't need has to go, as we don't want to fill up the new house with things we're just keeping for no reason. It was a bit surprising for me, but in the end, I had 15 boxes of things to get rid of someone to charity, and some broken stuff just went in the trash. Dad was almost as bad as me. He had 10 boxes to get rid of, but my mom, she only had 3. After we finished this, it didn't take long to get a good offer on the house, which Dad accepted. Then we picked a day to move in. Just 6 weeks later, we were in the new house, surrounded by boxes and eating takeout for about 10 days. We survived on TV dinners and takeout until we could sort out the kitchen. Finally, we got things in order, but we noticed Dad was spending more time at work, learning new systems and getting to know his team. He seemed to enjoy the challenge. Meanwhile, I found a job where I could work from home using my computer. It suited me better than my old office job in Georgia. It meant I could take breaks and go for a swim in our big hot tub. It was more like a pool, but the water was warm as it had a cover with those cool massage jets. After that, I had lunch on the patio and then went back to work. It felt so different from before. We had two houses nearby, one on each side. The house on our right was empty, and there was a sign in the front yard saying it's for sale. You could see through the windows that there was no furniture inside, and there were never any cars in the driveway. The house on our left was lived in, but the owner hadn't tried to talk to us since we moved in 2 weeks ago. We thought it was just a man living there because we saw him driving in and out in the early evening, but he never had anyone else in the car with him. I waved at him twice when he got out of his car, but he just stared at me for a bit too long and then looked away each time. Mom said some people are just strange, so not to worry much about it. There are folks who hear you say hi or see you wave but choose to ignore you. Maybe it's how they were raised or part of their culture where it's considered rude to say hi back. On whatever planet he's from, in the evening when I was in bed around 11's EUROP, I often saw a flashlight in his backyard. I'd look out my bedroom window toward the back of the property. I kept wondering what he was doing. Then, a couple of times when I was watching the flashlight, it stopped moving down the yard and then turned sharply. Then the light shone right at me through the window, and I quickly ducked and held my breath. I wondered how he knew I was watching because I always kept my head down and had little light in my bedroom. When I peeked again, the flashlight was gone, and he was nowhere in sight. I also told Mom that he never seemed to go out during the day, and I never heard him in the garden. But Mom always said, look, sweetheart, it's not our business what he does. So you just focus on your own life, as long as he doesn't bother us." But one day, I was chilling in the hot tub, looking at the blue sky, when I noticed something moving along our fence next to his place. I moved in the water to face that way. There was a ladder against the fence, and on top of it, I saw a man wearing a gas mask looking over the fence right at me. He held the ladder with a big, bright red rubber glove and appeared to be wearing some sort of black plastic coveralls. I stopped floating, stood up, and looked back at him to let him know I saw him. Then I called out, "Can I help you?" He didn't say anything, just kept staring. And then he did something really strange. He lifted a black cat from behind the fence. I could see the cat was either dead or not moving. Then he pointed at me with his other hand and made a cutting motion across his throat. After that, he climbed back down and disappeared, taking the ladder under the fence. Who does something like that? I went to my bedroom to get a better look at his backyard and figure out what he was doing. But when I looked, the yard was empty. I would have told Mom, but she and Dad were away for the weekend, so I was the only one at home. That evening, I decided to do some detective work. I crept down to the bottom of our yard where I knew that one of the fence panels was only held in by one fence post, as the other had been broken. Dad had actually mentioned it and said it was on his to-do list to fix. I had with me a dim small flashlight which I had found in Dad's toolbox in the garage. I gently pushed the fence panel to make a gap big enough for me to slip through. Then I squatted down in the yard and looked around. Now I could see his whole backyard much better. There was a big shed that I had noticed from my bedroom window. I moved toward it, keeping my head down as I got closer. The ground under me started to sink, and I saw many fresh-looking mounds scattered all around. I walked carefully through them until I reached the shed's door. It didn't have a lock, so I tried the handle, and it opened easily. I went inside, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. I used my flashlight to look around. I stopped at a big table in the middle of the shed. On that table was a large wooden board, like the ones butchers use, and it had fresh blood on it, even on the sides. When I moved the light away, I could see big red stains on the floor around the table and underneath it. On the back wall, there was a whole row of butcher meat choppers and knives. Then, as I moved the light around, it stopped on a whole line of meat hooks. There were dead cats and small dogs hanging. This person is really messed up. Then I saw some pentagram signs painted on the back wall. At first, I thought it was red paint, but when I looked closely, it was actually blood. This guy was into some dark art stuff, and I think he was doing some sick sacrificing of these poor pets. What's scarier is that he's our neighbor. Suddenly, I saw a light in the open shed door. Oh no, he was coming down the garden. I quickly left the shed, staying low, and closed the door. I crawled through the bushes to the fence panel I opened before, and after getting through, I turned and closed it. Then I rushed up the yard as fast as I could toward our house. I went in through the patio door and locked it. I grabbed my phone from the table and started dialing 911. To my horror, I saw the man walking up our yard, holding a meat cleaver in one hand, but this time he was wearing all black. When I got through to 911, I screamed into the phone, "There's someone with a weapon breaking into the house." As I headed for the front door, I gave them our address just as I heard the patio door smash. Then I ran out the front toward my car but realized the keys were on a hook by the back door. It means I had no choice. I had to run, so I went down the road. I briefly looked back and saw the person standing in the front doorway. The next thing I knew, I almost got hit by the police car turning the corner, responding to my call. I flagged them down and explained. They went in to arrest the guy, but he was hurt and hurt one of the policemen with the meat cleaver. After he attacked the police, they had to shoot him, and he died right there. The police later said they discovered more than 40 animal graves in his backyard. They also found strange stuff and worship books in his house. It was an open case about his mother who had been missing for 4 years. Living next to weird neighbors can be scary, and sometimes you don't realize how creepy they are until it's too late.
Story 3.
When I was very young, something really scary happened. There was a gun in the back of my parents' truck, and it accidentally went off. The bullet went through my mom's wrist and then through my left foot. But luckily, I still have my foot, and I was okay. Now, let's jump ahead 30 years to March 2018. I was dealing with a really bad ear infection and couldn't sleep because my head hurt so much. On the other end, my fiancé Steve, who works in construction, takes sleeping pills to help him sleep. One Thursday night, we went to bed because Steve had to wake up early for work on Friday. I was finally getting better from the ear infection, so that night, I was sleeping really deeply for the first time in days. But I woke up to a noise. At first, I thought Steve was just getting up for the bathroom or something, so I went back to sleep. But then I heard shouting. I was still half asleep and not really thinking. A few minutes later, I heard more shouting. I jumped out of bed and stood up in the dark. Then I realized it was Steve yelling. I was confused and thought maybe the police were in our house or something. But the first words my brain actually understood were "give me the money." I was like, wait, what? The police don't shout that. What's happening? Steve was completely naked, running at these attackers. And then he slams our bedroom door, trying to stop them from getting to where I am. These guys were trying to force the door open, and Steve keeps slamming it shut. Suddenly, I start hearing loud noises. These guys are actually shooting at us. I see Steve moving around the room like Spider-Man, trying not to get hit by a bullet but also keeping our door closed so they can't reach me. I hear Steve yelling, "Get the gun! Get the gun!" And I'm wondering how would I go after these intruders and try to get their gun. As I mentioned, I was sleeping really hard, and my brain was not working well. Finally, I realized Steve was talking about getting our gun. Yeah, I'm not very smart. So I turn on the light, grab our gun, and give it to Steve. But the intruders, who are really terrible people, have already run out the same way they came in through the back door. Later, it turns out our not so smart roommate didn't lock the back door. Anyway, I'm shaking and almost hysterical now, but Steve got grazed by 2 of the 6 bullets that were shot at us. I spent a whole month taking care of his wounds and helping him get better. We also got a dog and installed a home security system. Sometimes, I still put a chair under the doorknob at night, and I haven't had a good night's sleep in about 2 years. Most nights, Steve would have slept through anything because of his meds, and I would have woken up to the danger. But by some miracle, he heard them first. He protected me and himself like a true hero. He was supposed to be in Florida until the next week but came home early. I shudder to think about what those 2 armed robbers might have done to a woman all alone, sleeping deeply, and not knowing they were there until it was too late. Sometimes, I feel like I'm cursed, or that the people who love me the most always end up taking a bullet for me. First, my mom went through it, and now my fiancé has too. It really scares me to think that anyone close to me goes through these gunshot situations just because they're close to me. To those terrible intruders who broke into my house and took away my feeling of safety, I really hope karma gets you.